This research project had the purpose of figuring out if there is a correlation between how social a person is and the personality type of said individual. I am getting this task done by gathering data from me and my normie friend to see if our differing personality traits are reflected in how social we are as people. And after we got all of those data points, figured out, we did a statistical analysis in order to figure out if my hypothesis was correct. Let's go to the next slide. Segue. Oh, we're talking about hypothesis. We didn't even say the hypothesis. What was my hypothesis? Wait. Oh, wait, yeah, I forgot about this. We were supposed to use a bunch of crash course terms, key terms in our project. So whenever I say the key term, I'm gonna wink. I'm gonna wink at the camera, and then editing lean green loser girl will show the definition on screen. All right. So my hypothesis was how social a person can be reflected by their inherent personality traits, which is basically saying the personality traits that make up a person correlates with how social they are as human beings. For example, if a person is like an INTP and such, then they would get a specific amount of social interaction when compared to other personality types. Now that we have the hypothesis, let's take a look at the variables in the experiment. Now the variables are highlighted so I can't read it. We first have the independent variable, shmeep shmeep. The independent variable was the scores our participants got on their personality tests. And for our dependent variable, shmeep shmeep shmop 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 shmop, was the measured amount of social interaction people got throughout the day. This social interaction was the thing we used to describe how social a person is. Next up, we got the sample size. Now I left this blank because I wanted to interact with the audience a lot in this section. We're gonna figure out what the sample size is, so go ahead and tell me. What is the sample size? What will it be? Oh, and then in the next slide, let's see. Oh, what? It's nothing? Guys, I'm simply joking around. That is not a blank slot. That is actually the kanji for ichi in Japanese, which means it's one. Next up, methodology. What I thought was best for this study in particular was to use the correlational method. The correlational study, if you will. And that's because in this study, I'm going to be comparing the correlations between the amount of social interaction an individual gets and their inherent personality traits. We are doing this by taking data from me and my normie friend to see if inherent personality traits can be correlated with how social we are as human beings. Next up, we're going to talk about the operational definitions in our study. And in the hypothesis, I of course said we're going to measure how social I am inherently as a human being. Well, we're actually defining this social as instances of social interactions. And we measured these social interactions throughout the day as a way to gauge how social we are as human beings, or how social I am as a human being. And we use these instances of social interactions to measure or to gauge just how social I am as a human being. And we had a lot of rules that were laid out that me and my friend had to follow. Read them right here. Next up, we don't have time for this. And now for the procedure, in the correlational study, participants will write down every instance of social interaction they experience. Participants will then also take multiple personality tests to figure out what exactly their personality type is. And after we do that, we would gather all the data, we would put it on a chart or two or three charts, and then we would synthesize all the information in order to figure out if one's level of socialness can be correlated with their personality type. And now we have to do a little bit of introspection. We got to learn about lean green, good old LG, which is the independent variable. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what we learned after I took 5 personality quizzes. So first I took the 16 personalities quiz. And in this quiz, I learned that I am like Einstein, or rather, should I say that Einstein is like me, Shmeep. My personality type was INTP A. And here are just some of the traits that I figured out, okay, that I came across. I'm 76% introverted. Shmeep. We also have this quiz, which was meant to figure out what my learning styles are. And I realized that I was a visual ENTP learner, extroverted, intuitive, thinking, and perceiving, which came as a major shock to me personally. We're doing some introspection now, because what? I was 76% introverted here, but now I'm just so extroverted, like a beautiful butterfly spreading his wings. And then I started to think, wow, this is actually so true. Like, look at where the ENTP struggles, inconsequential learning materials or situations. I struggle with that, and that's very true. Like, you ever did Mathia? That's very inconsequential. Because you could just guess and use hints and you could get everything right. I also struggle if the learning process is full of mundane or repetitive tasks, like with the Mathia, like how you have when you get it wrong. I'm contradicting what I said earlier, but whenever I get it wrong, I have to redo it, and I really don't like the mundane tasks. And then it just makes so much sense. Now we could tell that these quizzes are very consistent because like I'm INTP over here, just exactly like how I was over here, INTP. So very cool. But let's also see what I learned about myself here. What did I learn here? You spend much of your time focused internally, exploring concepts, making connections, and seeking understanding. You seek to create complex systems of understanding to unify the principles you've observed in your environment. Your mind is complicated and active, and honestly, I would have to agree with all this. This is a lot like me, for real. I also took the 5 big personality tests, and we got other instances of personality out of me. I learned I'm very open, 80%. And I'm like, bro, that's actually so true because it's so high, and like I actually agree with that so much. We also learned about my colors. Shmeep, you could see what my colors mean. I'm blue and orange, dear. Go read up on my colors. We needed to basically figure out my personality traits, all right? And I learned that I am very open as a learner, but when it comes to, being social as an individual, I'm very introverted. Right here, we could see introverted. Shmeep shmop, if we put the definition on screen, we would see exactly what that means and how that would possibly be applied into social scenarios. And from my experience, I would have to say that makes me less social than usual. And also, my friend, we gathered data from my friend as well. So let's go ahead and see all of his data. I'll put his Instagram on screen. Go ahead and DM my friend. I asked him, what is your personality trait, little, I don't know what that says. It was blocked out. Little boy. Okay, I asked him that. He was an ESJF. That is what he got after doing personality quizzes. And let's go ahead and see what that means. ESJFs are
extroverted, sensing, feeling, and judging. Those who fall under this category seem referred to as the provider, counselor, caregiver, are typically outgoing, organized, tender-hearted, and loyal.
Basically, he is the alpha. Yeah, now that we have our first data point, which is the independent variable, we can now go ahead and take a look at the second data point, which is the dependent variable, which is how social I am and my friend is as human beings. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the data sheets. All right, so here's all the data points. The amount of social interaction I got was on the left side, and the amount of social interaction my friend got was on the right side. This is the mean of the entire population, that the mean reported that I got from a study, which I will show pretty soon. What does the mean? Shmeep shmop. Go ahead and take a look at that. Now let's actually go ahead and analyze our data. Let's put our data on a spreadsheet and let's take a look at the data and let's analyze exactly what the data represents. Now, segue. What is my hypothesis? Why are we all the way back here? So first, let's take a look at the mean of the overall population, just so we have something to compare it to. So this bell curve right here should represent the entire population, okay? Because it averages out towards the middle, which means that most individuals would report a level of socialness that gravitates towards the center, since we're taking the average of the entire population, because less people are super social and also less people are completely loser, antisocial loser girls. That's basically what this graph is meant to represent. And in this article, which was a more in-depth study of like social interactions and such, we figured out that people who participated in the study reported approximately 12 social interactions per day. The middle right here represents at least 12 interactions per day. Okay, the mean. Now let's take a look at our data. Starting off with my normie friend, which is an ESFJ. That was his personality type. And as you can see from his charts right here, which had the mean Shmeep of 17.8 interactions per day, you could see that it is negatively skewed a little bit to the right. And when comparing that to the bell curve of the original graph, which represents the average population, then we can tell that my normie friend is more social than average. That is what this represents, with all of these other values also, like the median, for example, which is Shmeep. And we also have the mode, which is also Shmeep, Shmop. Yes. And then let's compare that to my graph. Now, my graph, the loser girl value of an INTP personality type we can already see right off the bat that the graph is extremely positively skewed. Like comparing that to the original average graph, we could tell that he is a complete loser who gets no instances of social interaction. The mean of 6.5 interactions per day, that is exceptionally lower than the average, and it is shown by this graph because it is positively skewed to the left, which in this scenario means that I get less instances of social interaction. Even if we don't include the means and the values right here, we could already tell that it's lower than average because it's skewed positively. And also, what does that say? Standard deviation. As you can see right here in this little circled area, we can see the standard deviation for my normie friend's values. We're right here. And I also calculated the standard deviation of my own data. Boom, right here. Standard deviation is right here. And it took many hours of calculations, but I eventually did succumb. And I figured out what my standard deviation for my social interactions were. Now, what even are standard deviations? Well, schmeep, right there. Now we're on to the conclusion. And for the conclusion, we're going to run through a lot of questions in order to figure out if I truly understood what this assessment was about. Like, for one, what did I learn about research methodology as a result of this project? I learned a lot about the methodology of a case study and its application in psychological research. I learned how to gather all the data. I learned how to compare and contrast the data in order to come to a conclusion. And there's also more to ask, like, what did I learn about personality as a result of this project? I would have to say that personality traits do have a measurable impact on how social a person is. As we saw from me and my normie friend was super open and outgoing, as seen by his personality trait that he figured out after doing personality tests. And that was majorly reflected in the amount of social interaction he got throughout the day. Like, look how social he was. His graph was majorly negatively skewed, which showed that he was more social than the average population compared to me, little old introverted me with my low instances of social interaction and positively skewed graph. Very true. And lastly, what have I learned about myself as a result of this mini research project? Well, because of my loser girl personality trait of INTP, I have fewer instances of social interaction compared to more normie personality traits. For example, my normie friend who gets it on and such chatted negatively. I already said this and I wrote it down and I said it. It goes to show that I actually understand the material. Yep. Teacher wants the video to be 10 minutes long, and look, I yapped for 34 minutes. 34 minutes, and I have to cut it down all the way down to 10 minutes. It just goes to show that I understand this topic so much that I could talk about it for 34 minutes. That's so many minutes though.